Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
A bit of background. I've been wheelchair bound for several years now, but I try not to let it stop me from living my life. I have two wonderful sons who help me out, and my husband is an ex-military man who's been my rock through everything. Our first encounter with this Karen happened at a small local mart where she accused my older son of being an employee and refusing to help her. Despite him telling her repeatedly that he didn't work there, she wouldn't listen and ended up getting herself banned from the store after causing a huge scene. Fast forward to last week, we were shopping at Max Foods with my husband, both sons, and a couple of friends. We were almost done with our shopping list when we heard a familiar shriek echo through the store. Karen was screaming across the aisle, accusing my older son of working at this store now. My older son immediately spun around, along with my husband and younger son. He snapped back at her, calling her an old witch and telling her to go find an actual employee to harass instead. I stepped in, trying to defuse the situation by reminding her how she'd only end up embarrassing herself again like last time. Her face turned red instantly, and she launched into a tirade about how we got her banned from the other store and how she was going to get my son fired. Both my sons just rolled their eyes and mockingly told her they were looking forward to watching her embarrass herself again. I swear her face turned purple at that point. She started screaming obscenities about making sure none of us would ever work anywhere again. Then she raised her hands like claws, clearly ready to attack me. But my husband stepped between us. In his most threatening voice, he warned her that if she touched me, he would put her face on the floor and sit on her until security or police arrived. That stopped her physical advance, but not her mouth. She kept screaming threats about lawsuits and everything else she could think of. My younger son managed to quietly get an employee's attention, who quickly went to fetch a manager. The manager arrived while Karen was still in full meltdown mode, becoming so incoherent that no one could understand what she was saying anymore. My husband had finally had enough and used his drill sergeant voice to command her to shut up and let the manager speak. His military voice shocked her into silence for a moment. Then her face crumpled into fake tears as she turned to the manager, whining about how we had gotten her banned from Small Mart and were now harassing her and trying to make her leave this store too. My husband interrupted her dramatic performance to remind her about the security cameras, pointing out that the footage would show who was really doing the yelling and how she had tried to assault his wheelchair-bound wife. You could practically see her tiny brain working overtime to find a way out. Then she pointed at my older son, demanding that this employee be fired for insulting and threatening her. The manager asked her to clarify which person she meant, and when she pointed at my son again, he simply told her that none of us worked at the store. That's when she completely lost it. She screamed and slapped the manager across the face, then tried to run, but my husband blocked one escape route while my sons blocked the other. My husband announced that we would all wait there for the police to arrive. She made the worst decision possible and charged at my husband. True to his word, he grabbed her arm, spun her around, tripped her so she landed face first on the floor and sat on her until the police arrived. The police initially were going to arrest my husband since he had physically restrained her, but after taking statements and viewing both witness recordings and security footage, they changed their minds. Karen was arrested, all while kicking and screaming. She even spit on the officers multiple times as they dragged her to their patrol car. Her family and husband refused to bail her out. We immediately filed for a restraining order, which was granted. She's facing multiple charges including assault, attempted assault, and assaulting law enforcement officers. The store manager offered to comp our groceries, but my husband refused, saying it wasn't their fault. We had to deal with a crazy idiot that day. I guess some people never learn, but at least now she'll have plenty of time to think about her actions from behind bars. For context, I'm a 20-year-old woman who happens to be autistic. This means I'm kinda sensitive to loud noises and can get overwhelmed in chaotic situations. This detail becomes important later in the story. Yesterday started normally enough. My mother and I had just picked up our cat from a new veterinarian in a rural area we weren't familiar with. Our cat was already stressed from the vet visit, so we were trying to keep things calm and peaceful. Given the current ridiculous gas prices, we decided to take the bus home. When we reached the bus stop, we met several other people waiting there. There was a friendly woman who turned out to be a fellow cat lover, Karen, who looked to be in her 40s, Karen's friend, and Karen's 4 children who were all around 6 or 7 years old. At first, everything was fine. The kids were playing and being a bit noisy, but nothing too disruptive. The friendly woman noticed our cat Carrier and struck up a conversation with my mother and me about cats. It was pleasant until about 5 minutes in when Karen's children discovered a fallen advertisement poster. What happened next was pure chaos. The kids started kicking the poster around and screaming the most horrible insults at the woman pictured in the advertisement. They were using language that would make a sailor blush, and Karen just stood there watching with a smile, while everyone else looked uncomfortable. After 15 minutes of this mayhem, including the kids literally breaking the poster's frame, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over to one of the children who was holding the torn poster. I asked him to hand over the poster so I could put it away. The child reluctantly gave me the poster, but before I could properly clean up the mess, Karen stormed over. She demanded to know what I thought I was doing. I explained that I was putting away the poster because her children's behavior wasn't acceptable. Karen scoffed and told me that since some idiot had left the poster there, her kids could do whatever they wanted with it. She then tried to lecture me about being more understanding since I was once their age too. I responded by pointing out that this was still public property and that her children were being incredibly loud and disrespectful. I mentioned that everyone else at the bus stop was bothered by their behavior. This really set Karen off. She started yelling at me, calling me a weirdo and demanding to know who I thought I was. She got right in my face, screaming, not wearing a mask, sporting the most atrocious lipstick color I've ever seen. Think pink and orange highlighters mixed together. Being autistic, I really struggle with close contact and I felt immediately threatened. My voice got louder involuntarily as I told her I didn't appreciate her way of speaking to me and asked her to address me like an adult. Karen then had the audacity to tell me to calm down as if she hadn't just been screaming inches from my face. My mother, seeing my distress, called me back over. She knows I have trouble disengaging from confrontations once they start. While the friendly woman and my mother tried to distract me by returning to our cat conversation, Karen went on a rampage. She stomped around, ranting to her friend and pointing at me like a toddler throwing a tantrum, her bleached blonde ponytail whipping around. Her children, of course, went right back to destroying the poster. Karen made a few half-hearted attempts to stop them, but they wouldn't listen to her for more than 5 seconds at a time. After about 20 minutes, Karen, her friend, and her children decided to leave on foot. But before they left, one of her kids, the same one I'd taken the poster from, snuck up behind me and screamed directly into my ear. My ears were still ringing an hour later. The final 10 minutes at the bus stop were blissfully quiet, though my sensory overload took quite a while to settle down. The whole experience was incredibly draining, and it really showed me how some parents completely fail at teaching their children basic respect and decency. Just as our bus finally arrived, we noticed a police car pulling up to the bus stop. Apparently, the friendly woman had quietly called the police about the vandalism while all this was happening. Through the bus window, we could see Karen and her group being stopped by the officers just down the street. The friendly woman later sent me a message through social media. She had given me her contact info during our cat chat, letting me know that Karen had been fined for the vandalism her children caused, and the business whose advertisement was destroyed was considering pressing charges. I had just completed my second year of college, studying business administration, and I was struggling to find a job that paid well enough to cover my tuition and living expenses. My last retail job barely helped with my bills, so I needed something better. When I saw a job opening at one of the country's biggest banks, the one known for stagecoaches, I jumped at the chance. The job seemed perfect on paper, working in online customer service, helping people with their banking needs, all while getting paid more than my previous job. The timing was interesting too, as the bank had just acquired another smaller, older bank, and they needed people to help transition their elderly customers to the new online banking system. During the interview, they emphasized customer service and technical support. The job would involve guiding customers through website navigation and helping them merge their old accounts into the new system. It sounded straightforward enough. The first red flag appeared during training when they started heavily focusing on cross-selling products. I hadn't signed up to be a salesperson, but I needed the job, so I kept quiet and nodded along. My first few months were eye-opening. Most of my customers were elderly folks who could barely operate their computers. I spent hours patiently walking them through basic tasks. I would guide them through pressing the control key and the letter L simultaneously. They would often ask me to clarify which key was the control key, and I'd explain it was the one labeled Control on the left side of their keyboard. When they tried the combination, many would initially say nothing happened, and I'd have to verify if they were holding down both keys at the same time. Finally, they'd excitedly tell me that something had appeared at the top of their screen. This was a typical conversation, and I genuinely enjoyed helping these people. However, my manager wasn't pleased with my performance, not because of my customer service, but because of my sales numbers. During our meetings, my manager would point out that while my handle time was excellent, my sales numbers were concerning. I would respond with vague promises to try harder. Eventually, he revealed that he'd been listening to my calls and noticed I wasn't giving the sales disclosure at the beginning. The sales disclosure was a legal requirement where we had to mention products and services and ask for permission to sell to customers. They taught us various ways to mumble through it quickly so customers wouldn't notice, but I hadn't been using it at all. They put me on a performance improvement plan, making me sign a document committing to using the sales disclosure. That's when I decided to have some fun with malicious compliance. From then on, I would clearly and slowly inform customers that during the call I might discuss additional banking products and services that could interest them, and ask if they'd like to hear about these offerings. Almost invariably, they would politely decline, saying they just needed help with something specific, like their password. During our next coaching session, my manager complained that my sales numbers had gotten even worse. I explained that I was following the disclosure requirement exactly as written, and customers were simply saying no when they understood what I was asking. He could only respond with frustrated silence. Things got really interesting when our director tried to intervene. She said we needed to discuss my performance, but when I requested to have human resources present for the conversation, she refused, claiming it wasn't necessary. I simply told her that I would return to my desk and continue helping our customers. Their frustration grew as news stories started breaking about the bank's questionable sales practices and fake accounts. They couldn't fire me because I was following every rule to the letter while maintaining excellent customer service metrics. I eventually left for a better opportunity at a more ethical company. On my last day, I handed in my resignation letter with a detailed list of all my customer satisfaction scores and a printout of the news articles about the bank's scandals. Now, whenever I pass by one of their ATMs, I make sure to loudly remind everyone within earshot about those 5 million fake accounts. Some of my elderly customers from those days still send me holiday cards thanking me for being the only honest person they dealt with at that bank. 20 years ago, I was a young software engineer who had just married the love of my life. We were both fresh out of college, working entry-level jobs, and trying to make the most of what we had. After months of apartment hunting, we finally found a decent condo that fit our budget. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was our first home together, and we were determined to make it special. The condo was part of a complex where all the units faced the parking area. It wasn't the most scenic view, but my wife, bless her heart, always tried to find ways to make things beautiful. She worked as an elementary school teacher, and her creativity never ceased to amaze me. As our first holiday season as a married couple approached, She surprised me one evening by putting up a simple white rope light on the railing of our tiny 2-foot grilling area. It was modest but elegant, just like her. When I commented on how beautiful it looked, she smiled and said she just wanted to spread some holiday cheer. We decided to celebrate by going out to dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. However, when we returned, our festive mood was immediately dampened by an official-looking letter that had been slipped under our door. I read the letter to my wife. It stated that all holiday lights must be removed immediately from the exterior portion of the condo, warning that Christmas or any other lighting was against homeowners association policy and could result in fines and other legal actions. My wife's face fell as she quietly mentioned how it was just one small light. I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She'd spent her own money on those lights, and more importantly, she put her heart into making our first holiday season special. The owner of the condo had left us a copy of the Homeowners Association regulations, probably expecting us to simply comply and move on. But as I flipped through the pages, something caught my eye. I excitedly called my wife over to look at what I'd found. When she asked what it was, I explained that they could only regulate lights on the exterior balcony and grilling area. They couldn't control what we did inside our condo. When she asked what I was thinking, I told her to get her coat because we were going shopping. The nearest hardware store was about to close in an hour, but we made it just in time. I grabbed a cart and started filling it up. 2 artificial trees, thousands of colored lights, a massive LED light ball, and every holiday decoration that caught our eye. The cashier probably thought we were crazy. Back home, we spent the entire night transforming our condo into what I can only describe as a holiday light spectacular. Every window was filled with crisscrossing lights. The LED ball hung proudly in the center of our largest window. The sliding glass door became home to one of the trees, which we covered in lights and ornaments until you could barely see the green underneath. When we finally finished around 3 a.m., our condo looked like a lighthouse of holiday cheer. You could probably see it from the International Space Station. It was all completely within the rules. The next morning, I overheard our next-door neighbor on the phone excitedly telling someone about how our entire condo was glowing and comparing it to Las Vegas moving in next door. A week later, we noticed an unusual amount of activity at the Homeowners Association office. Through another neighbor who attended the board meeting, we learned what transpired. Karen, the head of the Homeowners Association, had demanded they implement immediate restrictions on holiday lighting visible through windows, claiming things were getting out of hand. However, a board member, who was an attorney, pointed out that they couldn't legally regulate what residents do inside their private living spaces, as that would be overstepping their authority. When Karen insisted something must be done, complaining that the whole parking lot looked like a carnival, the board member advised her to drop the matter unless she wanted to face potential lawsuits. Our neighbor told us that Karen, who had apparently been the one to slip the notice under our door, stormed out of the meeting. For the rest of the holiday season, she would purposely park as far from our condo as possible. We ended up moving out before the next holiday season due to a job opportunity in another state. But on our last day, while loading the moving truck, our neighbor came over with some interesting news. They told us that after we submitted our moving notice, Karen had tried to propose a new rule requiring all window blinds to be closed after sunset. The board had shut her down so fast that she resigned from her position the next day. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.